All right, so it is early in the morning on day 2. No one else is here, which means I don't gotta be nervous about vlogging. So I figured it would be nice to do just like a little tour of my display and kind of show you guys what's going on both the front and back end. So in case you haven't noticed, I have a lot of charm designs, and this is the biggest problem with my table, is that my charms are all double-sided, and I want to make sure that when people come to my table they can flip them over easily and see what's on the back, right? Because like pretty much every single charm I have has something different on the back. Like the Pokemon ones are shiny on the back. That's not the best example. Let's do this one. Yeah. And so I want to make sure that my audience, when they're coming up, they can flip the charms over easily, which means I can't just tape them in place. So what I've done is these are like little mini adhesive command hooks, and they've fallen off a couple times during the day, but usually you can just stick them back on and they're fine. The stickers are literally just taped on, masking tape. It's easy. My entire display is built up of these plastic little cubes. So I've got the white ones and the black ones. I use the black ones because I feel like the charms pop better, and also they're less transparent, so you can't see the garbage I've got behind them. As for these, I've gotten questions from these about like how I do this diagonal from other vendors before, and that's real easy. So these are just, I have these little these are about 6 inches tall, whereas the rest are like a 12-inch square. And these are attached with, get out of here, Aries, reusable zip ties. These are Velcro zip ties. So what I do first is I build up like this first layer of the half squares, like all the way around. They go underneath the entire display. And then I attach the diagonals with the zip ties. I can't talk and record. And then I build upwards from there. So I have, this is an 8-foot table. Usually it's a 6-foot table. And so usually what I would do for that is I just take this middle bit out, squish them together. So it's usually only 1, 2, 3. Right now it's 3 squares wide. Usually it's only 2 squares wide, but I have a little bit more room because we have an 8-foot table at Anime Frontier, which is very nice. So I have charms, 8 boards of charms. I have stickers up along the top, and then I have various things down here on the bottom. So I've got my sun catchers, I've got my 2 vinyl stickers, more sun catchers, my how to web comic book, pins, and these are on like felt boards that I have mounted to some of my clear boards with just like little screws. And then I have more pins, and this is my portfolio book that pretty much just has like all of my sticker designs in it, and I've got prints towards the back. So that people can just flip through that. Eventually I want to incorporate a print wall into this display, but it's probably not going to happen until next year, just because I don't have enough prints for a print wall. And then this is kind of the same thing. It is mounted with these boards, but I cut holes in them and I put easels into them. They're different because I had to use I usually use 2 of this type of easel, but I had to use 1 for my webcomic things because I don't have any room at the front. Usually I would just kind of pile these on my display like right about here, but this is a very narrow table, so I didn't have room to do that, so I had to move it up here, which meant that I had to use one of these easels for up here, so I had to use a different easel for down there. That's why it's different. And then I have a couple of business card holders. These are all laminated signs, so I can just take them and rearrange them whenever I want. I have my little podcast board with their own business cards. I have my webcomic advertisements. I just let people take these. I have QR code for the comic, little blurb about it. This is where my square reader goes. So when I'm actually vending, my little square reader just goes here, and it's taped down, and so people can see it real easily. I also have these little lights. These are just battery powered. They're not turned on right now. I've got a QR code with my socials on it in case I run out of business cards, which I probably will because it's Saturday and this is all I have left. Oops. I also have a ring light mounted up here, and I haven't super needed it for this con because the lighting is better than it was at Anime Frontier, but I don't know, I feel like it makes my booth pop a little more. So let's look around what I have going on the back, because people have asked me like how I manage my inventory when I'm back here. So I have made, the nice thing about cubes is that they're meant to be drawers. They are meant to be shelves, and so I make them into shelves. So as far as charm storage, this is a drawer of a Christmas ornament organizer, and I got that tip from folks on the Artist Alley Network Discord. So there's 1, 2, 3 drawers that all go inside of that box, which I'm gonna fold up so it's out of the way. But for now it's sitting there so you guys can see it. And so what I have done is I've made like little dividers, so you can kind of see like which character it is from a faraway glance. And this is kind of a new addition. I added this with the SKU numbers so that when I have table helpers, it'll be easier for them to see what's going on. So yeah, this one has all of my Rune Factory in it, and then Bravely's, Ace Attorney, Fire Emblem, and then just my cast-off charms that aren't labeled, and I need to do that. This box has Tokyo Mew Mews, my VTuber, more VTubers. This is all my Holo Lives. I pretty much put all of the Holo charms, like the holographic ones, in the same box. These are my Dice Bobas, and then my Dice Candies, and then I've got my Dongo, Vitamin D&D, and then these are all my Evolutions, so I've got all my Eevees up here, and then these are my Genshins that are on their way out, so I didn't even make labels for them. I didn't bring a lot, but... And then the third one is, this is all of my sad D&D, and then my Critical Role for the next couple of rows, and then Legend of Zelda tacked on here at the very end. That's my jellyfish friend. I traded him to my neighbor at MomoCon. Then for pins, I have 2 of these boxes. These are just from Michaels, and they latch shut, and then just keep all my pins in there. And so I have 2 of those. And that's just easy because when someone orders something, I can just drag them out. I have books down here. This is my little box for prints. It's literally just a pop it open file box. Ta-da! It's a little unorganized, but it works. Once I get like larger prints, I'm gonna have to figure out a different way to do that. And then this is another thing that I need to figure out a better solution for, but this is temporary. This is just a scrapbooking box, and I'm using it to hold all of my acrylic pin sets and also the charm mystery bags. I'm gonna find a better way to sort through those later, but for now I have not found the ideal solution. And then I have my inventory journal. This is how I keep track of everything that has sold. And I do this so that I'm not scrambling when I get home. I can just go through and like mark off what inventory has sold on my Shopify store. And I don't do it for things that I don't need manufactured, like my stickers and my prints I make at home, so I don't need to like hang on to inventory for those, because if I run out, I just make more. This is my external battery pack, which is my new best friend. I bought this on Amazon not too long ago, and it lasts forever. I charged it last night, so it's at a full charge, and it has all of the charging ports built into it. So if I need to charge my phone, I just pull that out. Now I don't have to worry about carrying 1,000 different charging cables with me. Right now I'm mostly using it to charge the LED light, or the ring light. So I can show you guys how that works. I'm gonna plug that in, turn it on, and then the switch is right here. And now I have my ring light. Let's see what that looks on the front. Ta-da! So like, it's not super bright. The lighting in here is not so bad. It's pretty decent actually. So the ring light doesn't accomplish too much, but I don't know, I like having it on. It feels good. But yeah, that is the behind the scenes. I've also got like a first aid kit. That is my box for various nonsense. All of this usually goes in there, but while I'm actively using it, it's just out. Yeah, that's the back end. Also, I've got a bag full of food because I get hungry. Anyway, tour over. Yay. Okay, beeping back in. One more thing, because I forgot to show you guys how I maintain my stickers. I have a sticker binder. This is just a trading card binder, and my stickers all, for the most part, fit inside the regular sleeves. But for a couple of designs, I have these larger 4-pack sleeves that I just keep those in. And I can just add pages as I need them, and it just keeps all my stickies organized. And then when someone says, hey, can I buy a sticker? I can just go into the sticker binder, grab what I need, and close it back up. Yay. All right, so it's the morning of day 3, and one thing I realized I didn't show you guys yesterday was I wanted to show you kind of what my security system is like. So I haven't unpacked yet, and this is what I did last night. I didn't record last night when I was packing because it was so noisy, but right now there's not really anybody around, so I will show you what I do. So my storage for all my stuff overnight is these 2 suitcases. These are both hardback suitcases, and these are actually what I carry all my stock in when I go to shows. So when I pack up in the evenings, I just put everything back into the suitcases. And each suitcase has a locking mechanism. This one has a lock built into it, and this one has a separate lock, little combination lock that I bought. It just strings through the zipper pulls here. Now, this could be enough on its own, but the thing about it is I've heard horror stories of people who have their stuff stolen because they put it in a suitcase like this, and then someone just overnight just picked it up and rolled it out, and then all of their stuff is gone. And I didn't want that to happen. So I actually have an additional security in here. So I have a bike lock. It's a little hard to see, but I have this like rope bike lock underneath here that goes through both of the handles of these suitcases. And the lock is like just a lock that I had from last time I had a storage unit. And the key to this lock, I can't turn it, but you get the idea. There we go. So I have a key to this lock, and the key to this lock is on my key ring that goes home with me every night. And so it is attached, it's kind of looped to the structure of the table. So it kind of loops around the structural leg. So if somebody wanted to steal my suitcases, they would have to drag the entire table away with them, or bring industrial lock cutters into the artist alley, neither of which I think is gonna fly. Is it overkill? Probably. Is it effective? Yes. I have never had anything stolen. So, security, woo! Hello, good people, and welcome to another Artist Alley vlog. It is time, and by vlog, I mean just kind of me showing a little bit of footage I took at the convention, and also talking about my experience with a convention because I'm too shy to actually vlog in public. So, like I said in the last one, this is going to be kind of a series. I'm planning on hopefully doing one of these for most of the cons I do. And this vlog is specifically covering Anime Frontier 2022, which took place in early December of 2022 in Fort Worth, Texas. I had the pleasure of going to this con last year, and I had some thoughts about it, but I'm happy to report that this year was not like a massive improvement, but honestly, they did some pretty good improvements to this con that I'll be talking about in the video. I wanted to get this video out sooner. It took a little over a month to get this one out, but like I said in my last video that I posted, December kind of kicked my butt. So, before we get into it, let's talk about the art I'm doing for this video. The art featured in this video is my January 2023 mail club set for my Patreon. If you're unfamiliar, I have a webcomic called Cast Off, and every month I do a new set of Patreon exclusive merch for my monthly mail club, and the theme that patrons voted on for this month was a steampunk AU featuring two of my main characters. This merch will only be available for Patreon members during the month of January 2023, so if you want to grab that, the link for my Patreon is in the description. Your support on Patreon also gets your name in the credits of all of my videos, early access to comic pages, and a bunch of other stuff, so if you're interested and want to help support my works, link is down there. Anyway, so let's talk about Anime Frontier. Last year, 2021, was the first year that this con ever took place, and I was excited about it because I thought that it had good potential to be a big con in Texas, another one that I could go to just, earn some money. I'm an artist in Texas. I'm always welcoming new opportunities to make some money, meet some new people. And DFW has apparently had some bad luck with conventions just kind of being weird in the last couple of years. Anime Frontier is being run by the same crew that does Anime NYC, which is a very big and, from what I understand, like a very notable convention. And so when it was announced that they were opening a new con, Anime Frontier, in North Texas, I thought, okay, that's really exciting. I want to apply for this one. So I applied for it last year and I got in. And it had a couple of things that I would have hoped to improve on. The main thing with Anime Frontier 2021 is that it was really slow. Like, pretty much everyone I talked to in the Artist Alley complained about how slow it was the entire weekend. And actually, this wasn't just an artist problem. This was I talked to several vendors as well who just came by to visit the table. Usually if you're an artist or a vendor and I see your badge when you come by my table, I'll ask you how the con's been doing, and pretty much everyone I talked to said that it was really, really slow. The conclusion that most people, including myself, came to is that there were too many artists and vendors compared to the amount of attendees. Seeing as it was a first-year con, there wasn't as many people as maybe they expected to come. And so therefore, what audience was there was spread really, really thin throughout the convention center, which led to really long gaps between sales and just empty hallways of the artist alley at like times you would think were primo times. And this was feedback that a lot of people gave them last year. And based on how it went this year, I say this year, I mean 2022. I know this video is coming out in 2023. When I say this year, I'm talking about 2022, so please keep that in mind. A lot of people gave them feedback saying, hey, the Artist Alley Vendors Hall needs to have fewer artists and vendors because your attendees, you don't have the amount of attendees to support this huge Artist Alley. They seem to take this feedback to heart because there were about 100 or so fewer artists in the Artist Alley this year. It was still a decently sized artist alley, but it was a lot smaller. There were a lot more attendees from what I could tell, and therefore it was just kind of a more concentrated experience and more people were able to come by and do shopping. It felt a lot less slow than last year. Again, still slow at times. It's only a second year con, but it's definitely still growing. So last year I did turn a profit, but it was a slow and kind of uneventful, boring weekend overall. I was able to stay with some family members last year, so my expenses were really low, but it was still, like, slow and boring enough that I was debating coming back for this year. But I applied anyway, because it wasn't like it was terrible. It was no Anime Austin. I definitely did better than that. But I applied for it, didn't get in, and I thought, okay, well, that's fine. But then a couple months before the convention, I ended up getting in off the wait list. And I just said, you know what? Sure, let's try this again. Let's see if maybe year 2 has anything better. So part of my debate on whether or not I should go to this con or not was because I had so many cons lined up for the last quarter of 2022. I was nervous that if I did too many cons that close together, I would give myself a mental breakdown because I'm not used to doing that many cons in a row. I had applied for OniCon, which I believe was in like late October, like kind of around Halloween weekend. And then I would have nothing for November, but then 3 conventions in December. And I was nervous that that was going to be too many and my inventory would not survive and it would just be too much activity and I would just give myself a brain aneurysm from having to travel that much. But what I ended up deciding to do when I got into Anime Frontier was I kind of looked at my schedule and said, okay, I think that if I ditch OniCon, which was in Galveston, about a 4-hour drive away from me, I think if I ditch OniCon, I can probably do Anime Frontier without feeling too bad. And in the end, I was really glad that I ditched OniCon because everything I heard said it was terrible. So for Anime Frontier, one good thing that I do have to say about them is they were pretty consistent about sending out emails well in advance, which some cons are not that great at. I've definitely been to cons where I didn't know my table location until I arrived at the show. But this one, they were pretty good about sending emails and stuff, so I kind of knew where I was going. Just very nice when a con has good communication and they let you know how the con's gonna work before you drive 4 hours to get to the event. Anyway. The one thing that was weird about this convention was that there was no Thursday night set up for artists, which I would have liked so I could have slept in a bit on Friday morning. Not being able to set up on Thursday didn't impact me too much, because I can fully set up my table in under an hour, usually closer to half an hour, but for this con I had to slightly rework my table a little bit, and I'll talk about that more in a sec. But I know that a lot of other artists have really complicated table displays that can take multiple hours to set up, and not having a Thursday setup is just kind of weird. Usually for Friday, Saturday, Sunday conventions, cons will let vendors and artists come in on Thursday to set up their tables in advance so that they have more time. And so it was just kind of weird that they didn't have that for this con. I don't know. It was just weird. The lack of Thursday load-in was very strange. Another slightly annoying thing for this con was having to buy insurance for the weekend. I've heard about other cons requiring vendors insurance in the past, but I've never had to deal with it personally until now. Basically what it is that vendors insurance covers you, the convention, and the venue, and any possible other people who are impacted by a liability if, say, your art display falls over and breaks someone's skull open, which I have heard happening before. So vendors insurance just pays for it if anything ends up happening. And this was not something that they required last year, but it was something they required this year. There's a couple of different places that offer vendors insurance for people like artists who do Artist Alley and things. But Anime Frontier did recommend a service. I forget exactly what the name was. I didn't write it down anywhere. It was about $85 to cover for the full weekend, and I just ended up going with the one they recommended because I didn't want to risk paying money for insurance and then not having all the necessary forms on it. It just is paying like 30 extra bucks rather than going for a cheaper service and having to fill all the forms out. Paying like 85 bucks for something that's already pre-filled out with all the information that needs to be on the form, it was worth the avoidance of hassle for me, so I just went with their people. So, convention began for me on Thursday. I was originally planning to wake up super early on Friday, like at 5 a.m., and just driving straight to DFW, and then immediately like parking, setting up, checking into the hotel, all that jazz. I only live about 3 hours away from the venue. That's what I did last year, and it worked okay, so I figured I could just do that again this year. But what happened was I ended up sharing a hotel room with some friends, and they asked me if it would be possible to extend the stay so that they could get there on Thursday, and I ended up saying, well, that's going to be more convenient anyways. I ended up adding an extra night to our hotel stay, which overall made things more convenient. I ended up driving in Thursday afternoon and then just kind of relaxing the night before. Again, there was no Thursday setup, so I couldn't have done that, but it was nice to just kind of chill the night before and then not have to stress about driving in super early. Also, as weird as it sounds, this was actually my first time getting a hotel for a convention I'm vending at. Every other con I've done until this point, I've either been local and just driven home at the end of the day, or I've stayed with friends or family, so this was a new experience. My verdict is it's expensive, but it is nice to be so close to the con at the end of the day so you can just walk a block back to your hotel and then pass out immediately. So, stayed the night in the hotel Thursday. Friday morning, I wake up at 7 a.m. because I am a morning person and my biological clock is like, hey, the sun's up and so are you. But unfortunately, I had a terrible realization when I first woke up. As I was getting ready, I realized that despite marking it off on my packing list, I somehow didn't pack deodorant, and I just kind of sat there in the bathroom for a few seconds thinking, I refuse to be one of those stinky people who don't wear deodorant during a convention. I cannot be that person. And so at 8 a.m., I Googled where the closest convenience store was, walked a half a mile to the closest CVS, bought myself a stick of deodorant, and then walked back and ended up giving myself blisters on Friday morning. Stupid. But you know what? This is why we bring a first aid kit to conventions, everybody. Once I got back to the hotel room, I just slapped some band-aids on my heels and I was fine for the rest of the weekend. First aid kit. Very good idea to bring to a con. Even just basic stuff with just like band-aids, headache medicine, etc. I never go to a con without a first aid kit. It has come in handy like every single convention I've done. So after my morning walkabouts, I headed back to the hotel. I got back at maybe around like 9. I grabbed my 2 suitcases full of all my inventory and display stuff, and I just wheeled them over to the convention center. checked in at the loading dock, but they didn't have our physical badges right away. I guess maybe their printer was running late or something. So I ended up checking in, going and setting up my table, and then grabbing the physical badge like right before the convention center opened. So check-in was pretty easy, simple, no like real line or anything, pretty well organized. Setup was really fine and easy. All of the rows for Artist Alley were labeled with big signs at the end of each row with like your letter, and all of our tables had our artist name attached to the front. I have my own personal little social media banner that I put over the front of my table, so I never need the signs that they provide, but it's always nice to know that, like, yes, this is definitely my table, confirmed, everything is good. So, like I said before, I have my setup down to a science, and I can fully set up my table in about a half an hour if I don't get distracted. It ended up taking a little bit longer at this con because we had 8-foot tables instead of the usual 6, so I had to futz around and kind of decide how I was going to fill that extra space. Side note though, I love 8-foot tables. Can all cons forever have 8-foot tables, please? You can fit so much more stuff on them. They are so nice. I love 8-foot tables. Any con that has 8-foot tables is immediately just, I love it. I love it. Also, I ended up having a table at the end of my row, and it really just highlighted how much I really need some kind of banner for my display. I wouldn't have anywhere to put it normally, but I feel like I really need one of those rolling banners that you can just, like, they're 6 feet tall and you just kind of like unroll them and attach them to a stand. I need to make one of those for my webcomic or something, because I keep getting put at the end of tables, but not like end cap tables. There's just empty space next to me. I need a banner now. Note to self, make a banner for Cast Off or something. So, sales-wise on Friday. Friday was kind of slow, if I'm being honest. It definitely wasn't as bad as last year. I remember last year my mom was helping me at my table, and I just kept complaining to her the whole time. It's like, where is everybody? What the hell's going on? Why is it so slow? Wasn't that bad, but still slow. And you can always tell how slow a convention is, because how slow a convention is inversely proportional to how much doodling I do in my inventory tracking notebook. The slower the con, the more doodles are in the margins. And I ended up with a lot of doodles in the margins of my inventory book for this con. Also, my placement wasn't great. I was only 2 rows away from being in the literal back corner of the room, like the furthest possible table from the entrance. I was at the way back of the exhibit hall, but despite that, I still had pretty decent traffic. There just wasn't a whole lot of activity on Friday. I always expect this. Friday, I mean, I personally do this, is Fridays at conventions are the days where you just kind of walk around and look at everything, and then you buy stuff on Saturday and Sunday. So I never get too grumpy when I don't make a lot of sales on Friday, but it's still just kind of like slow Friday. So, rolling over to Saturday. A little bit of a story time here. I had a goal at this con that had nothing to do with my table or my sales. So you guys probably know this if you watched some of my previous videos, but I love me some D&D, and one of the guest cast members from Critical Role was going to be a guest at this con. Robbie Damon plays my favorite character from the current campaign, Dorian, and I have a charm of the character that I wanted to give him. And here's the thing, I've met voice actors at conventions before because they've just been walking through the artist alley and they've actually bought stuff from me. I met the voice actor for Riker from Rune Factory 5 because I have Rune Factory 5 merch at my table, and he got really excited when he saw it, and he was like, hey, can I get this Riker? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And then he said, yeah, I voice Riker, actually. I'm like, excuse me? So I've had instances like that happen. But I really wanted to give Robbie this Dorian charm, and I was not positive if he was going to be able to walk through the artist alley at any point, especially because the few times when I got a chance to go look at his table, he had a huge line, every time I went back and checked. And so my confidence that he would be able to just walk through the artist alley were pretty low. So I knew that the best way to get this charm to him would be to go through his autograph line, but here's the problem. I was tabling by myself. I'm fully solo at most of my conventions. The guest signings had the same hours as the exhibit hall, so if the autograph lines were open, I was also expected to be open. And if I wanted to go wait in line for autographs, I'd have to leave my table unattended for a while and risk losing out on sales. And that's something that I am never glad to do. And so I kind of had a choice to make. So what I ended up doing was the exhibit hall opened at 10 a.m. on Saturday. Robbie's signing opened at 10:30. I figured that if I was the first person in line, I could just give him the charm right when he opened his signing, and then zoom back to my table and only miss the first half hour of sales. Which, the first half hour was at 10 a.m., and my table was all the way in the back of the exhibit hall. People wouldn't even have time to walk all the way to my table before I got back, so I ended up just putting a BRB sign on my table, locking down all of my stock so no one got any funny ideas, and then I just prayed that no one stole anything off my display. And you know what? That risk did pay off. I was first in line, had a nice chat with Robbie's handler before his autograph signing opened up. I unfortunately wasn't able to grab a photo or anything because I was kind of in a hurry to get back to my table. But I did get to say hi. I gave him the Dorian charm. We did rollies on some dice that he had with him. And we both rolled nat 1s, which is like, what a way to set the mood for the day. Gosh dang. And then pretty much as soon as that conversation was over, I zoomed back to my table and nothing seemed out of place. Thankfully, most of the stuff on my table is attached pretty well. I've never had a theft so far, and I did not break that streak with my little escapade. So that was nice. And honestly, that early in the morning, there weren't a lot of people there anyway, so I realistically didn't miss out on too many sales, which made me feel better. Anyway, Saturday was my best day sales-wise. Once I got back to my table, I was making sales pretty consistently all day without too many long stretches between customers. I heard from some other folks that Saturday was slow for them, but I personally did fine. So who knows? Maybe I just got lucky. I have no idea, but I'm grateful for the sales. So yay. And then for Sunday, not too much of note happened on Sunday. Overall, the day felt slow, but I still made a lot of sales when I went back and looked at my sales report for the day. So it wasn't quite as good as Saturday, but it was almost as good as Saturday, which was kind of surprising. So, overall thoughts. My hopes for next year, one thing that I would like them to change, I don't know if they will, but one thing I would like is if maybe they change the layout slightly. So last year, the food court was in the way back of the exhibit hall. So people had to walk through the vendor's hall and artist alley to get to the food and dining area. But this time, the food court was in front of the artist alley, which may have discouraged some folks from walking through the artist alley. I always appreciate it when conventions plan their layout around helping artists get additional foot traffic, and so I think that swapping the locations of the food court and artist alley would have helped a lot. That's the layout they had last year, so I hope maybe they switch it back for next year. Another weird thing is that last year they had like little water canisters, like the little water coolers you have at offices where you can just fill your water bottles up or just get a cup of water. They had those like all over the convention last year. This year, they didn't have them at all. I didn't know where to refill my water aside from just going to the bathroom and using the tap water. I didn't figure it out until I was asking people, and I found out that there was like a little water refill station outside one of the doors of the vendor's hall. But it was so far away that I couldn't leave during the day, so at some point I ended up having to just I have a sign that I keep just in my spare stuff box that just says, "Side quest, if you bring me a sealed bottle of water, I will give you a free sticker." And it works every time, and it's great for when I'm thirsty but I can't leave my table. But also, it would have been really nice for, the con to have water readily available. It just felt so weird that they didn't have the water coolers out this year. I don't know why they wouldn't have done that. Maybe the convention center wanted people to spend money on bottled water, which is shitty. Let your people hydrate. Gosh dang. Anyway, so that was just weird. I hope they bring that back for next year. Bring back the water, because your con goers get thirsty, and it's very hard to find water at this convention center, apparently. So, I also had a lot of really nice interactions with folks. I think my favorite interaction of the weekend was one person who came up and was staring at my display for a really long time, and then just kind of casually asked me, he's like, so, what fandoms are you in? Because your art style looks really familiar, but I can't put my finger on where I've seen it before. And then I said that I was probably best known for being in the Adventure Zone fandom, and before I even finished that sentence, they just yelled, and it was really cute. If you were that person, it made my day, so thank you. I also had a lot of Critical Roles cosplayers come by and buy merch I made of the characters they were cosplaying, which is just always the cutest. I love that every single time it happens. If you are cosplaying a character and you buy merch of that character from me, it is the cutest and I love it. And also, I had a bunch of folks who told me that they knew who I was and that they read my comic. And I even had a few folks who knew about my idol anime podcast, which was kind of surprising. And by the way, if you like idol anime, you should listen to the idol anime podcast my friend Sarah and I make. Link in the description, by the way. But yeah, so overall, fun con, a little slow at times, but, you know, second year con. So before we end the video, let's talk about money. Let's talk about how much I made and how much I spent getting to this con. So firstly, let's talk about the expenses. My table was $233 for the weekend. The insurance, like I said, was $85. The hotel that I got was just down the road. It was one of the hotels in the convention block, so it was slightly discounted. It ended up being about $700 split between 3 people, because I was able to find roomies for this con, and so it was about $233 each. Parking at the hotel was about $50. Gas was about $30 because I spent about a tank of gas there and back. And I did have to get a cat sitter for this con, which was another $80. So the total expenses for the weekend were about $700. You will notice that I did not list food expenses because I ended up just cooking some stuff before the con and just bringing food with me, so I didn't have to go eat out at restaurants or anything like that. So, as far as profits go, before subtracting expenses, I made about $3,600 in sales over the weekend. If you subtract the expenses, I made about $2,900. And last year I made about $2,300, so despite having more expenses, I still made more money this year than I did last year, which I think is definitely a good sign. So my closing thoughts for the con, I think it's a good con if you're local or if you can keep your expenses relatively low, like I did. I was able to split a hotel room with some friends, I was able to drive so I didn't have to fly in. I personally wouldn't go for this con if you're flying in. I think it will be a fly-worthy con if you give it a couple more years to just kind of let it grow and flourish, and as long as they don't have any big major mishaps, I think this con has a lot of good potential, and I'm hoping that it continues to grow and do well. I did hear some folks talking about they were hoping it would eventually grow enough to move to a bigger venue and maybe have it in Dallas instead of Fort Worth. I don't know enough about the area to have any thoughts or opinions on that, but I do hope for a larger venue in the future. The exhibit hall at the venue it was at is nice and very large, but there's not a lot of room for anything else. There's not a lot of panel rooms from what I've heard, and because of that, the event schedule was really thin. Like, I was looking at the schedule on the app, and there just was not a lot to do in the way of panels, and I'm not sure if maybe people just didn't submit, or if maybe there just wasn't room to house people running panels. Either way, maybe a bigger venue would help with that. Also, the worst part of this con is that they required, like, masks or vaccinations And I wore a mask the whole time, and I still ended up catching the dreaded C disease at this convention. And I am so mad that I went almost 3 years without catching it, and then this con is the one that broke my streak, and I'm so angry. Basically, the Monday after the convention, my throat started getting sore, and I thought that it was just allergies, but then the next day I ended up taking a test, and it came back positive, and then I was laid up for almost a week. I'm very grumpy about it. Anyway. Stay safe out there if you guys are going to cons, because no matter how many precautions you take, no matter how much masking and sanitizing you do, you can still get your butt. But I was vaccinated and had all but my most recent booster. I think that's probably what did me in, was not having the most recent one. My symptoms weren't bad, I was just kind of tired and sick for about a week, but I was able to recover quickly, so... Still a pain in my butt, but, you know... So anyway, that was my experience at Anime Frontier 2022. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you learned something. If you were also at Anime Frontier as a vendor, an artist, or an attendee, what were your thoughts on the con? Leave them down in the comments. I'm very interested to hear what other people have to say. As far as future con vlogs and videos, my next vlog will be for Holiday Matsuri. I'm hoping to have it out soonish, but it probably won't be until next month. My next convention I'm attending is IkiCon in Round Rock, Texas. That's just north of Austin. That'll be in late January, and I will be planning on doing a vlog for that one. And then after that is a very, very small con, Central Texas Kids and Teens Comic-Con at Round Rock High School. It's a little one-day event. I'm probably not going to do a vlog for that one, but I'll probably be posting like pictures and stuff on Twitter. So, you know, you can do that. Also, just as a last point to reiterate, the art I did in this video was for my Patreon that I run for my webcomic. If you haven't read my webcomic, I hope you do, and I hope you enjoy it. I've been told it's pretty good. And also, if you're interested in obtaining the Steampunk AU merch, it's gonna be gone after the end of this month, so go ahead and grab that. The link is once again in the description. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye!